So lovely to be here, and lovely to see so many teenagers here for this session. I actually do some teens groups in Melbourne, but there's usually about 15 or 20. So it's a little bit different from this. So that's great to see so many, and because I think it's you probably don't get so much opportunity to hear and talk in English or guided meditation in English in person. I know on the internet, huge amount of everything. So good and bad, not so good. So this evening I'll just introduce myself for those. Yes. Can you hear at the back? Yeah, that's a good point. Otherwise people are hearing, that's good. Very good point, actually. So that's great. So I've just introduced myself. I'm Venerable Nissarano, and you've probably gathered that already from the poster. And I'm an Australian monk who ordained with Ajahn Brahmavamsa Mahatero in Perth I started in 1997 as a novice monk, and I was quite an old novice monk. We say potty hamdru, don't we? I was far from being potty at that time. I was about 43, I think, 44. So, and then ordained, took full ordination with Ajahn Brahmavamsa, and I spent in total about 9.5 years in his monastery before I came to Sri Lanka in 2006. And I spent 13.5 years here in Sri Lanka, mainly in forest monasteries and in the forest. I spent 8 years living in a cave south of Balanghoda, and it was a wonderful experience because I was living in this cave. It was a beautiful place, really nice on the side of a mountain in the forest, and it had a rock pool, a pokana, just below the cave, where I used to bathe when I first arrived. And it was just a very beautiful place with lots of animals, and it was quiet, but being on the side of a mountain above a village, you do get quite a bit of noise coming from the school and the buses and all that sort of thing. But it was a wonderful experience, and every morning, just after 6, I would go on alms round into the village, which I love to do. It's a very strange thing, even though you're depending on people to feed you. In a Buddhist country, no worries. No worries. You'll always get enough to eat, in fact, too much. So I had to usually reduce the amount of food before I came up the mountain again, because it was too heavy to carry. So I did that for 8 years, but as I was getting older, it was becoming a bit challenging, actually. And so I couldn't continue with it. Finished in 2018, I left the cave. But only about, not last week, the week before, I went and spent a night there when I visited that area. And I saw the villagers, the dayakas in the village, and it was lovely. I went on an alms round for 3 hours, mainly not because of walking, because of talking. There was a lot of talking, catching up. So it was very nice. So this evening we have this opportunity to have a bit of a talk, but also I always like to have a practical side to it. So there'll be guided meditation, and as well as Q&A. There can be, as we go along too, there can be can bring up questions, or you can respond. The talk is mainly in the format of questions. So I'll be asking questions all the time. And I quite like this format, actually. I think it's good because it's a bit more interactive. Otherwise people drop off, don't they, when they hear a banda, it's the end of the day and feeling a bit tired. So the theme for tonight, or the title for tonight, I think you know, the path to happiness, the path to happiness. And I think I often wish that I had met the Buddha's teachings a lot earlier, because I was in my 30s when I came across the Buddha's teaching. But it would have been so helpful when I was in my teens to sort out, the confusing aspects of life, to get a bit of perspective, and also to develop really positive mind states, qualities in the heart and the mind. So this is a great good fortune in a Buddha's country to come across the Buddha's teachings and to be able to hear teachings that speak to you. This is the main thing, really. If you don't hear a teaching that speaks to you, even though the Buddha's teaching is wonderful and full of wisdom, kindness and compassion, you may not connect with it. So that's the important thing, being able to connect with the teachings. So I was going to say that the Buddha's path, the Noble Eightfold Path, isn't it, is not only a path to happiness, it is actually a happy path. The whole of the path is really, it's not accompanied by a lot of suffering and hardship. It can be, but if we practice it correctly, if we practice it according to how the Buddha intended, it will be a happy path, because we start out with a right understanding or right view. If we have a bit of an idea of what right view is, then the world is not as confusing as it can be for us. We can see what is important, and the most important thing in right view, and this is something people don't get, is what is good and what isn't good, what is bad, and to be able to tell the difference. And sometimes people say, that's basic, that's basic. But of course, if you look at the world, people don't know. The world is as it is because people don't know good from bad. Because our egos get in the way, don't they? We're right and we think everybody else is wrong. So this is a very important part of the path. And I always like what Ajahn Brahm says, a wise person, if we really understand right view, what is right view? It's just a map of reality. It's very helpful. This is a map of reality that an enlightened being, the Lord Buddha, discovered, or rediscovered really, it's not his creation. And Ajahn Brahm often says, a wise person is a happy person. So this is the benefit of developing wisdom, understanding. And I remember when I was young, it was pretty confusing. There was a lot going on in my life, and I think in all teenagers' lives. So, and of course, with the Buddha's teaching, when I say practice it correctly, of course that is according to right intention. I call it samma sankappa. And this is very important for practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, but for living our lives too. And of course, the main one is looking for happiness in the right place. And the right place, I shouldn't say this now because that spoils the rest of the way. The right place is always inside ourselves. And it's not seeking our happiness from out the things in the world. There is happiness out there for sure, there is. But the source of happiness is always in here, always has been. It's everybody knows that to a certain extent. When you say, where is happiness? They say, oh, it's inside. But they don't necessarily look for happiness there, perhaps because they don't know how to develop it once they look inside. So this is a path of looking in the right place for happiness, but also looking with incredible kindness. This is maitri or metta, and with compassion, with not harming ourselves and others. And this is compassion, caring for ourselves and others. So this is the way we practice the Noble Eightfold Path. We need to have that kindness, need to have that caring, need to not harm ourselves, not hurt ourselves, not hurt or harm others too. So it's not only the Noble Eightfold Path, we need to live our lives like this, isn't it? With this kindness, especially to ourselves. And of course the meditation that I teach will emphasise that, so we'll get to that. And of course the very important source of happiness, and at least it reduces the dramas in life. What's that? The precepts, keeping sila, keeping morality, is very, very important for our happiness and well-being. Because I say to people, if you want an interesting life, if you want drama in your life, start breaking the 5 precepts. You'll soon get it. You'll soon get it, and it will lead to harm for the family, for friendships, and in society as well. So these 5 precepts are a way to avoid living in a teledrama, which some people do, especially if they have sexual misconduct and breaking that. And of course, the Noble Eightfold Path, where is happiness too? In developing the mind, in meditation. And this can be a very, very deep peace, can't it? And deep happiness. This is on offer. The Buddha is, of course, is a great exponent of deep meditation, the happiness coming from within. This is where, in meditation, especially if it works for you, you see where the source of happiness is. Because this is, you're going to the source in meditation, the mind, the heart. And this is where incredible states of happiness, they call these, and peace are. And of course these deep states of meditation, Ajahn Brahma, so he talks about them a lot. Have you heard of Ajahn Brahma? Many people heard of him? I think, yeah, he's very, very well known here in Sri Lanka. Wonderful. And he talks about, what does he talk about a lot? Meditation, and particularly the jhanas, or jhana. So that's another form of happiness. And of course the path itself... Oh, isn't it loud enough? Wow, this one's very quiet, isn't it?
Is it better?
Is that better? I think that's quieter, isn't it? I think that one was louder.
This is better. This one?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Still can't hear?
It's a little difficult. I'm getting toward maybe.
Yeah, no, I think part of the problem, I can hear it in some building, is echo. You know, with echo you have to speak quite slowly, because if you don't, then the words get sort of overridden by the echo, and so you can't hear clearly. So you can always listen to the recording later. What did he say? No. So that better? I think that sounds quite loud actually. Yeah, that sounds good. So, and of course the happiness from meditation is one thing, you know, that peace and that incredible joy, we say priti sukha in meditation. But, of course, there's a happiness from our insight, our understanding of our own bodies and minds. This is where insight happens. This is where the Noble Eightfold Path happens, in here, in each of us. So this is the important thing, where we develop the happiness of insight, understanding the nature of reality for ourselves, not from the Buddha, for ourselves. And of course, someone who understands it deeply, they can reach, can experience the first stage of enlightenment. What's that called? In Sri Lanka it's so famous. Every second Sowan, that's it, Sowan. And Lord Buddha says for Sowan, they are independent in the teachings, which means they know what it's all about, so they have no confusion about what needs to be done. But of course, they would take advice from the Lord Buddha or somebody who has a higher attainment. And what's the supreme happiness in the Buddha's path? What's the highest happiness? Any ideas? I think that's an easy one. The highest happiness, of course, is enlightenment or awakening, and leading to the experience of nibbana. And of course, what's the great thing about awakening or enlightenment is that all those negative qualities that make our lives so difficult, that's what's really making the difficulty in our lives. that sort of greed, that sort of anger, that irritation, that depression, anxiety, and the delusions, not understanding reality. Once they're removed, then it's easy. Life is very, very easy for someone who is enlightened, fully enlightened. And of course, they're also free from one other thing. What's that? Very easy, this one too. Being reborn. At your age, you may not think that's a big deal. I think most people, and when they're young, they don't recognise that as being so problematic. But unless any of you here remember a previous life, some people do, especially when they're young. But by the time you're a teenager, it's probably fading, I think, if you have remembered in the past. So if we know that we've lived again and again and again, and this, I think there's a few smiles, so I think, yeah, maybe. If we do understand that, then we have an incentive to end rebirth. If we all have grandmothers and grandfathers and parents who are getting older, and we see what they go through, in terms of old age, sickness and death. And if you think, hang on, I have to keep doing this again and again and again, then, like the Buddha, you'll think, no, waddy. Oh, enough of that, enough. So this is the happiness of the whole path. Now I can start. That's just the introduction. Yes, good. So where is happiness to be found? You've got the answers. Where is happiness to be found? Is it out there? Yeah, it's within us. That's always the case. And of course we can ask, is happiness outside in the things we experience through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching? There is happiness out there. And the Lord Buddha always mentions that there is happiness from the senses, but it's not the same quality as happiness from within. And so I wonder what the things you probably find interesting. Do you play computer games? Do you have games? Gaming is a big thing. I see people who are in their 40s who are doing gaming. Because I come from a generation that didn't do gaming. We didn't have gaming, But also, of course, videos, isn't it? Where we have YouTube and all those things, and the music on the internet, food, and of course, pleasant bodily experiences too. These are the things that most people are trying to find their happiness from, actually. And some do, some don't find it. And so, of course, one can ask, does happiness come from experiencing these things? Yes. Yes, and this is why most people continue to look for the happiness out there, because that's where they're used to finding happiness. And there's a lovely story I like. I often use it, actually, but you probably haven't heard it, so it's good. About a Sufi wise person, although he was a bit of a character, we say character, called Nasruddin. And this Nasruddin was like a teacher or a holy person in a sense, but he was also a very funny character as well. So one evening he was outside his house, searching all around under the street light in front of his house, looking for something. And his neighbour came out and said, "Nasruddin, what are you looking for?" And he said, "I'm looking for the key to my house." And so the neighbour said, "Very good, I'll help you. We'll look for it together. We'll find it very quickly." After some time, they didn't find the key at all. And the neighbour said to Nasruddin, "Do you know where you lost the key?" Amazing, isn't it? People always ask things like that. But Nasruddin, being Nasruddin, he said, Yes, I know where I lost it. And the neighbour said, where did you lose it? He said, and Nissarano said, in the house. And the neighbour said, why are we searching outside the house? And Nissarano said, the light's much better out here. And we're all the same. We're searching for happiness, the key, outside the house of this body and mind, especially the mind. And we, even though we know that the key is inside the house, we are looking outside because this is where we're used to looking for happiness. This is where we have hung out for lifetimes after lifetimes. So this is the reason that we look for our happiness from the externals, from outside ourselves. So this is very common for most of humanity. But of course, we can realise too that if happiness were coming from the outside, if happiness was coming from the things we see, hear, smell, taste and touch, wouldn't everybody experience the same things? Wouldn't that be the case? I would think if it was coming from the outside in, that's what you would expect. But of course, we all like different things. And it's very obvious that that is where the happiness from those things is coming, from within us. And it's based on what we like and dislike. And so this is what... And of course, what we like and dislike, it's the things that we get a pleasant feeling from, we like, don't we? The things we get an unpleasant feeling from, we dislike. And what's the third category? We usually experience things in terms of don't care. There's a lot of things in our lives, we call it neutral feeling, really. It's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, so you don't care really. We don't give it any intention. We want what we like, and we want to get rid of sometimes the things that we don't like. So this is the experience that drives us trying to look for happiness outside. This like and dislike. And it keeps us so busy because we have to do a lot, don't we, to get that sort of happiness. And I know as a teenager, it's probably more difficult. It's not like you probably have a lot of money and resources that you can go out and get what you want or order things on the internet or whatever it is. So it's a lot more when we can't get what we want. Is that pleasant? No, we feel frustrated. We feel like, wow, who's standing in my way? Is it mum and dad? They're saying no, we can't. So this is, it shows us a very important teaching of the Lord Buddha, that when we want something, we are not happy, we're not content with what we already have. We cannot be happy until we get that. We cannot be happy. And then, when we get it, it might be the wrong colour, the wrong model, or whatever. It can be any of these things, and we may never get it. So that's the other possibility too. This wanting, we call it in the Buddhist language, in Pali, tanha, wanting, craving. It's the big disturber of the peace. And the Lord Buddha, quite radical, he says, what are we? We're the slaves of craving, wanting, slaves. Isn't that amazing? It's not that we're the ones that are having the craving, the wanting. We are the slaves of that state of mind. And that keeps us very busy. That's how samsara keeps running. So, and when we realised that, in fact, and I think this is something really important, and for teens, for everybody really, when we realise, are our minds creating the world we experience? Do you think that's the case? Are our minds creating the world we experience? Do you think that's the case? if we understand it, because the Lord Buddha says that the mind is the forerunner. It comes before all experience. You have that nice Pali phrase in the Dhammapada, Mano Pubangama Dhamma, that the mind is the forerunner of all experience, comes before. And it reminds me, and this was a very good teaching for me, and I thought it was pretty radical when I first heard it. It was at my first Theravada Buddhist Centre in Perth, where Ajahn Brahm teaches, but he wasn't the main teacher then. And the teacher then was Ajahn Jagaro. And I went to this talk, and the theme of the talk was, we are all the centre of the universe. Do you feel like that? We're the centre of the universe? It's our universe that we're the centre of. And it's true. The way we see the world, it really is a reflection of the qualities in our minds. And so whatever state of mind we have, and you'll see it with your friends, my goodness, the sound, at school and everything, you'd see it with people. If they're in the frame of mind that they have will be how they experience the world. It's pretty obvious to us. If we're depressed or anxious, worried, then everything looks like that. Depressing and worrying, threatening, fearful. If we're angry, that's the way we see that everybody's a bit of an enemy or a problem. We've got to deal with them and we have to get them out of the way. So this is a very important thing to realise. What is in here is how we experience out there. And if you only get that tonight, I think that's a valuable takeaway, because it means we work on what's in here, and then the experience of the world will be a much more pleasant experience, will come from the qualities of mind that we develop, rather than, as often is the case, from these negative qualities of anger and greed and self-interest and delusion, the 3 B's in the Buddhist teaching. So this is very important to see, and I hope that most of you can relate to that this is your experience too, that the state of mind that we have determines the experience we have of the world. And that is a very useful thing to know, because we'll start working to improve the situation. We can. So of course, that's the good news, isn't it? Can we influence our minds, our mental states? Do you think we can? Anybody? That's a very good. I think some people are saying nodding. And do many of you do mindfulness at school? Sati? Anyone going to Sati Pasala? Oh, right, there we are, some at the back. And also, sometimes people do maitri bhavana. Do anyone do maitri bhavana? This is actually influencing the states of mind we have. If we do it in a very good way, if we do it in a way that brings up the feeling of maitri, then it's well worth it. And I call these skillful means that Lord Buddha taught for making, influencing our minds, our mental states. I call it the Buddha's beauty parlour. The Buddha's beauty parlour. Do you see beauty parlours here much? Here in Australia, when I go on arms round in Melbourne, there's a lot of beauty parlours up the street I go. I can't believe it, actually. I never realised. But it's the Buddha's beauty parlour. And what's he making beautiful? Is it going to be the body? No, he did that at the gym. It's the mind. And so this is what the Lord Buddha is focusing on, making our minds really beautiful, but also wise, and in the process happy. Because if we develop these good qualities, then we have happiness coming to us, then the experience of the world will be very similar to those mind states. The world will be like a mirror in a way. It is always actually like a mirror for us. So this is what we're doing when we develop the mind. This is mindful development. And mainly, of course, this is big part is through bhavana, isn't it? Through meditation. But it's not enough. It has to be also through our speech and our actions as well. Not just while we're meditating. If we meditate for half an hour, once a day or every so often, that's going to have some benefit. What benefit? It reconditions the mind and reduces the negative qualities. That's the idea. But if we only do that and then we go around our business speaking, saying things that are unkind, we've been developing maitri on the cushion or on the chair, wherever we are, and then we go around saying things that are unkind or doing things that are unkind. Of course, this is not going to work. So the Buddha's teaching is a 24/7 teaching we use in our life, throughout the day, throughout the night. And of course, very important teaching is really looking after this mind. How do we look after this mind? I wonder. And of course, this is what the Lord Buddha calls samayama. Looking after this mind means that we avoid things that bring up negative states of mind, that really reduce the quality of our minds and our experience. So this is part of samayama, and this is important. We know, I'm sure each of you knows, situations that bring up a negative response. You know, some of the people that you interact with, maybe other teenagers or other students, you know if you avoid them, it will be better than if you don't. So this is using what we call sense restraint, you know, not allowing our minds to run off with the senses. And this is very important for us, for everyone, for adults, everyone, when we are using the internet. We have to see the things that are not really good for us, and so avoid them, don't go there. And see, when we do that, the mind is much happier, calmer, and we are much freer. When we follow our defilements, then we really get churned up. We're not at peace. So this is very important for all of us, you know, really to be selective about the things we see, hear, smell, taste and touch, and particularly what we think about these things. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching is not a big problem. It's what we make of it. That is the big problem, actually. Oh, there we are. So, also feedback. So, and of course, then the other aspect of this is, well, when we are experiencing a lot of anger, or we're upset, or we are depressed or anxious, then how to let go of that, how to deal with that in a skillful way. What do you think is the best way? I'll tell you what I think the best way. And it's having maitri for ourselves. That is the most important thing when there's a negative mind state, having maitri for that negative mind state. Very often, if we're having anger, we're having depression, anxiety, we say, get out of here, I don't want this. And what are we doing? We're just adding a negative to a negative situation. It's not going to help. And if we have maitri for that state of mind, allow it to be, allow it to go away by itself, reduce by itself. That is a much more skillful way to deal with these negative qualities in the mind. And so this is hard work, actually. It's much harder work. The shortcut, everybody wants a shortcut, don't they? Looking after the mind is developing good qualities. If we develop good qualities, the bad ones don't get so much opportunity, they don't get so much chance to make our lives miserable. So developing good qualities like maitri, like karuna, compassion, like mudita, having a lot of joy and happiness for other people's success, good qualities, these things actually, they make our experience very enjoyable, but it means that the negative qualities don't get that much chance to come up. So this is the ketipara. This is what everybody's looking for, isn't it? The ketipara in life. And it's good to reflect, actually. Sometimes the ketiparas take a long time. I've been on a few very long ones. Ajahn Brahm says people are often looking for the shortcut. And he says the ketipara is the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the shortcut. But sometimes people want to, focus on one factor of the Noble Eightfold Path rather than the whole package. And of course, if we develop these positive qualities, as I say, it reduces the opportunity for the negative, but we need to keep them going. We need to maintain them. So that is important. And when we do maintain them, then we continue to increase our happiness and decrease the negative states of mind. So I was going to use as an example of the positive states of mind that lead to happiness to do a meditation on maitri, on maitri bhavana. I call it, I'll give it an introduction in a minute actually, I call it best friend meditation. Being one's own best friend is a theme that I use for it, because that can bring up the feeling, for me it does, the feeling of maitri, and I think it's so important when we develop this quality of maitri. So I think we can check up by trying this maitri bhavana and see what effect it has on the mind. So now I'll just give a little bit of introduction to this, feedback, best friend or best mate. This is what we say in Australia. I don't think in Sri Lanka they say that, best mate, guided meditation. And of course, we can speak louder. Can you speak louder? All right, yes, can hold it closer to the mouth. There we are. Really, can people not hear at the back? No? You can't hear? Wow. You can hear there, right, good. All right. So you can always ask ourselves, what is our deepest wishes? What do you really think is important in your life? What are your deepest wishes? How about being happy? Is that an important thing? I think most people, that's the bottom line, really. But usually it's people want love, they want friendship, they want kindness, they want acceptance, they want friends that don't judge them, they want safety and security in their life, and they want contentment and peace. And these are the things that we're looking for in life often, and to be free of problems of body and mind. This is quite often, particularly illnesses, but some of the mind states we experience can give us a lot of suffering in our lives, a lot of difficulty. If we are feeling bad about ourselves, or we criticise ourselves a lot, this can be very unpleasant for us. So, of course, when you look at that list, admittedly I wrote the list, but I think it's pretty applies to most people. I don't think no way, I don't want that. I think most of these things people want. Of course, maitri meditation can help with develop these qualities, and that's the purpose of maitri. And some of you said you do some maitri bhavana, so great. Do you know what the word maitri or metta, what it means in the original, in the Buddhist language of Pali? Anyone know? It's a very good way to think of the quality, the emotion that it brings up. It means, it's from mitta, and mitta, of course, friend, like kalyana mitra, a friend, and as a friend. So this is a quality that all of us have. I think probably all beings have this quality. It's a natural quality of friendliness, and that kindness, that openness that comes with that quality. And 3 years ago, I was teaching a group of, from a boys' school, actually 2 groups they came, at our Buddhist centre in Melbourne. And this is what I taught them, because I think it's so important for us to be a best friend or a best mate to ourselves. Someone who's there for us in difficult times, because this is going to be very helpful for us, and to be the best friend or best mate of others too. So this is, to be on good terms with ourselves is not easy, especially when you're a teenager. I remember we tend to compare ourselves to lots of different other teenagers, but also some of the people we look up to, the sports people, the singers, and I know from my own experience that was the case, actors, actresses and so on, in terms of their looks and all these sorts of things. So we can be very negative about ourselves and feel down about ourselves. So being on good terms with ourselves is so important. And because, why? We have to live with ourselves, don't we? I know many people spend most of their life distracting themselves so they don't have to be with themselves, but you see the smartphone and you're doing the scrolling, all this sort of thing. But we have to live with ourselves, and to be able to like ourselves and accept ourselves. This is very important. Realising, of course, we won't be perfect. Anyone here perfect? But there can be change, it's better change for the better. And I know from my own experience, when I lived in that cave for 8 years, there were no other monks around. There was nobody else living next door to me. The next cave to me on either side was about 3 kilometres away, and there were monks staying there. So when you live on your own, you can't blame anyone else, You just live with yourself. You are with yourself. And so, to be on good terms with yourself is so important. And I never felt lonely, or really felt lonely, because when you're on good terms with yourself, when you have maitri for yourself, you don't feel lonely. And so that was a great experience. I learnt a lot from being there, living on my own. But one of the important things I said to these boys 3 years ago was, and it really does concern me now too, is that, and I think everybody talks about it quite a bit, is the high rate of a youth suicide. And this is a real concern, because it means we're not our own best friend if we feel driven to suicide. And of course, in America, they're always ahead of everywhere else, aren't they? It's supposed to be the second leading cause for the death of teens, people from 15 to 24. They say second cause, and that's quite a lot. But I saw on the internet this afternoon, Korea has even a higher rate. I thought, wow. Because there's fairly high pressure sort of experience for teens in Korea, so very high rate of suicide. So, and of course, when we practice maitri, it's so good for our mental well-being. I think during the coronavirus period, really important. And also for loneliness too, because when we have maitri, for ourselves and for others, we really connect with them, even if they're far away. Like I was far away from most people when I was living in that cave in the jungle, but I didn't feel far away from them. We can live with people very close, but if we don't have maitri for them, they can be, it's like they're far away. They're not in our minds, they're not in our hearts. So this is very important, that it gives us that sense of connection. Because one of the biggies these days is, I don't know if it is in Sri Lanka so much, loneliness. Do you think it's a big problem here, loneliness? You're much more social than in the West. Everybody in the West wants their space. And then they complain, I'm lonely. Because they like to have their space. And of course, one of the big pluses with maitri is it overcomes this negativity within ourselves. So it immediately improves the quality of our lives. So this is something that we can really benefit from. And it heals. It's very healing, maitri, too, for us. And most importantly, it reduces the hindrances to meditation and to developing wisdom, because these hindrances are what make meditation difficult. We have the 5 hindrances, I won't go into them now. And the main thing with maitri is it's so enjoyable. It's a very pleasant feeling to have, because what we're aiming at with maitri is not words, they're just like signposts. It's the feeling of maitri, the feeling of being a best friend, and that's what the guided meditation will focus on in a minute. I think I have to start actually. But just as a brief introduction of how to develop maitri or friendliness meditation or being your own best friend is by focusing on the good qualities each of us has. Focusing on them and not looking at the faults of ourselves and others. Usually that's what brings up these negative states of mind, actually, looking at our faults and then looking at other people's faults. When we, in education, this fault finding has got its uses, but we really can't turn it off, and it turns on us too. We fault find, oh, I'm not this, I'm not tall enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. So it's the opposite of that. We're looking at our good points, and this is very important for our happiness and well-being. So, and yes, and I mentioned we develop maitri of not only in meditation, but when Lord Buddha talks about this by body, speech and mind, and he says in public and in private, so 24/7 basically. And we can use words, and I think everybody's familiar with words. You can use images and you can use concepts, and I'm using concepts to develop feelings, and this is our own best friend or the best friend. Buddha mentions a mother's love for a child or a parent's love for their child can be a useful way. Ajahn Brahm, he likes opening the door of your heart. Have you heard that one? Opening the door of your heart. Yeah, that's nice. And I like this saying from, he's actually, I think he's like a Hare Krishna in India. He's on the internet, he was a while ago. And he says, and this applies to maitri, if we want to be loved, we may not be, but if we want to give love, who can stop us? And that's the important lesson of developing maitri. Everybody in this world is looking for love in one form or another, usually in the wrong forms actually. But if they have this maitri within, they have what they're looking for. And also maitri, if we have maitri, it's a magnet for other people too. It's a great condition, a great cause for success in relationships, in the world in general, if you have that. Because maitri is really attractive, so it draws people, so lovely. So now we can do the guided meditation, maybe for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I think that's probably enough, and then we can have, if there are any questions after that, comments or complaints. So we can close the eyes, and get in contact with our bodies and make any adjustments so that it feels balanced and it feels comfortable. Your head balanced over the shoulders, And the shoulders balanced over the hips, and the hands either on the lap or on the knees, if you feel comfortable. Just feeling how the body is, what it needs. And now we can mentally relax the body, starting at the head and with the head and face, giving this warm, kind, soothing attention to the head and the face, allowing the head and the face to really relax, and moving to the neck, all around the neck, relaxing and soothing it, giving the neck this mental massage. And moving to the shoulders, both shoulders, and giving this relaxing, soothing mental massage to the shoulders, so they feel very loose and relaxed. And then bringing to mind the arms, starting at the top of the arms and moving our attention right down to the hands and to the tips of the fingers, soothing the arms, giving the arms this warm, kind attention. And now bringing to mind the front of the body and the back of the body, just below the shoulders, and moving our attention down the body, soothing, relaxing, giving this gentle, kind, caring attention to the back of the body and the front of the body, down from the chest to the stomach, to the abdomen, allowing the body to really relax. Now bringing to mind the two legs, starting at the top of the two legs, and moving our attention down the two legs, all around them, to the feet and the toes, soothing, relaxing both legs with this mental massage, warm and kind. And now we can become aware of the whole body sitting here, comfortable, relaxed. And we can bring to mind the intention to bring up this feeling of being a best friend, our own best friend, for ourselves and also the best friend for others. And we can do this just by reflecting on those qualities of a best friend that we really value. The fact that we feel they're very friendly, they're kind, they don't judge us, enjoy being with them. And they can really understand us, and we can understand them. Just reflecting on the qualities of a best friend. And we can get in touch with the feeling that can bring up a warm feeling, a feeling of friendliness, kindness, caring, openness, all these things, getting in touch with that feeling. And we can give that feeling to our minds and hearts, this feeling of being a best friend to ourselves, to our mind, caring for our mind, being kind to our mind, not judging ourselves. And we can bathe any of these negative qualities we may be experiencing now, maybe even tiredness, or worry or concern, whatever, with this kindness, with this friendliness of a best friend. And now we can get this feeling of being a best friend, friendliness, kindness to our bodies. And we can just move through the body from head to toes with this feeling of being our own best friend to the body. Being kind, understanding, friendly with our bodies. And when we become aware of the breath coming in and coming out, we can give this feeling of the best friend to the breath coming in, this warm, kind feeling coming in, and a warm, kind feeling going out. Just breathing it in and breathing it out. For those that like a mantra, we can breathe in yes and breathe out yes. Being a best friend to the breath, breathing it in and breathing it out. And if the mind wanders off, we can just remember the qualities of a best friend that brought up that feeling that we experienced, just remembering it, and breathe that feeling in and out. coming close to the end of the meditation, we can share this feeling, whatever feelings we developed, of being a best friend, maybe kindness, just friendliness, thankfulness even, with everyone that's here this evening. Seeing them as a best friend. And we can expand this feeling in ever-widening circles around this room, sharing this feeling of being a best friend to all the beings around this area, human beings, the animals, the unseen beings, the insects, all beings, no limitation. And we can keep expanding that feeling of sharing, being a best friend, further and further and further. Until we cover the whole world. And all realms of existence, being the best friend to all beings as safe and secure. And now we can come back to ourselves and we can just reflect for a few moments on how we feel now. What did we notice during this guided meditation? What stood out? And was that feeling of being a best friend, did that arise for me? That feeling of kindness, friendliness, relaxation and ease, acceptance and warmth. And also, we can ask, what caused this feeling to come up? What really worked well to bring up this feeling of being a best friend? And now we can make the aspiration or intention to develop more of this feeling of being a best friend to ourselves and to others, to really make a lot of it, and also to be a best friend through our speech and our actions too. Keeping this feeling of a best friend in our minds and hearts. And now we can slowly come out of the meditation and open our eyes and move the body. I hope that was a useful experience for you, and that you were able to get some sort of feeling of maitri, because that's the important thing. A lot of people are saying Supadveva, all this, but they may not be getting a lot out of it. So it's important to contact that feeling and to realise there are a lot more positive emotions on offer. The Lord Buddha emphasises compassion, karuna, mudita, joy for others' happiness. What I call happy for you, when you're happy for another. And instead of envying another person's success, good qualities, whatever it is, we actually get happiness as well. So it's a real win-win situation, as they say. And upekkha is that sense of acceptance and balance, seeing that our bodies and minds come from our actions, not bodies, speech and mind, and developing things like contentment. And I know Hiroshi she wanted me to give a contentment meditation, which is one I do called So Lucky. We are so lucky. But I think maitri is even more important than the contentment. And thankfulness and gratitude. These are all qualities we can develop. And there's more positive qualities. So I'd like to just finish there and to ask if there are any questions or any comments or complaints.